to people is ultimately hardware and wires. Yeah, there's towers and there's signals, and our devices have various receivers and chips and stuff that bring about the signal and all this, but ultimately we're talking about a literal web of wires that go again across
the ocean
from sea level to sea level, right, shore to shore, all over the place. And we have the, I guess, privilege of browsing and touring and interacting and being screenified by this interface. But at the end of the day, it very much is part of a command and control grid. And it's been allowed to proliferate, and perhaps in a far more freeing way than even the controllers would probably like, which is exactly why there's going to be a coordinated shutdown of some kind in an effort to roll out basically the DMV-ification over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's through the ICANN infrastructure and the DNS and all this kind of DARPA funneled infrastructure that we use on a day-to-day basis as the rails by which we conduct commerce and communications and information relay. So they've been trying to clamor for centralized control and ID usage over the internet for a long time. And it's been roundly shut down in various forms in which they try to propose it. But if you look at the Five Eyes, intelligence infrastructure, there are backdoors. There are switches, essentially kill switches, that go basically all the way to the top.
It's funny we exert export-import controls over China for their backdoor implementations into chips that they sell us, but we do the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys ever wonder why the major semiconductor company who builds all the CPUs that go into your computer is called Intel?
Mm-hmm.
That's the name of the company.
Right.
But didn't Obama and his administration, which is really no different from the current administration, any administration for that matter.
It's just Obama presidency term 3.0.
Front man for the agenda for what we're talking about, creating legislation that gives even more control. Like, how much more control do they need when to broadcast my voice over certain wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum requires a license? Like, does that not strike anybody as odd?
Sure.
Like that whole FCC, regulatory framework, licensure for radio operators and things of that. I'm sure there are arguments for it, from a standards perspective. We got to keep the airwaves, clean, meaning that we're not like, everybody, we don't want to jam the channel or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess there's still some legacy laws in place having to do with profanity and things of that nature, which they still have on the books, and we'll use it if it makes sense for their agenda. In North Carolina, they put age restrictions on certain pornographic websites, which, I could see the reason for that in some sense, but I think people need to kind of think about what you're saying, the DMV-ification of the internet. That's always how it will start. Mm-hmm. We need to put these laws on the books so we have a lever to ensure the safety of the children, because they care so much about the children, right? Like, they'll restrict you and me from visiting certain adult websites, but then they'll use our tax money in the public schools to force objectionable sexual content down the throats of children. So like it's a huge double standard, and
It's
and if
everywhere.
and I would be a fool to think for 1 second that the age verification law that they passed
As if
recently
that's
has
gonna do
anything to
anything,
do
yeah.
with them wanting to protect anybody.
No, no.
It's for the furtherance of this agenda, but
And the huge data mining and the avatarization of IPs and the DARPA again, black budget, alternative VR simulacrum reality that they've been constructing, and is at its highest point of definition right now, especially with all the AI stuff.
speaking of, I didn't even mention it in the introduction, but ztitic.news is the first next generation news network on the Theta, powered by the Theta blockchain. And if you're not initiated into what Theta is, it is a cryptographic project. It is a blockchain. It's also a decentralized internet, like we've been talking about. Although it's not there yet in terms of its ability to store data, static data, and so on. Like conceptually, that's where it's headed. And we are thinking that it might be a potential solution for some of the things that we've been talking about: censorship, the dependency on centralized content delivery networks and other infrastructures. If there's a tool set out there that can help us kind of split off and create, to use a crypto term, fork from the old internet, if you will, that would be cool. Now, it remains to be seen, as Theta has a bunch of big corporate backers and supporters, whether that will come to fruition. But nevertheless, for the time being, we find it promising. And when I say the network is powered by Theta, what I mean for now is we're a stakeholder in the Theta network, which means we generate these tokens called Tfuel. Tfuel are essentially, in my eyes, a software access token to the Theta network, which is a suite of different infrastructure as a service that you could leverage, like video streaming, eventually static data storage. They're now training AI models using the disparate systems of people who run edge nodes, and these edge nodes are just your laptop or your PC or maybe one day your phone, not being used sitting in the corner or on the table, but earning money to do these compute jobs, because it was already the case that there wasn't enough compute power to satisfy the demands of business and human activity. Now with this AI, we're doing obscene computations for arguably frivolous or nefarious reasons. It's putting even more demand on that. So Theta's presented a solution to where we've got all this latent infrastructure just sitting around not being used. Why not monetize that? If you've already bought a graphics card, even if it's 10 years old, it still can provide some value in offsetting the enormous costs associated with this demand. And hey, you can earn these cryptocurrencies. So anyways, we also, are powered in the sense that we earn these Tfuel. We plan to eventually recycle them because we can kind of see in the future a need to fund our own content delivery. Maybe YouTube will not be a facility for us to use anymore.
Right.
And we need to have a means to still distribute our content. Tfuel could be that for us in the future. But also, we reward our participants and contributors to the show in Tfuel, not only to help them, learn about the system, but if we see it as promising, it could be, worth more than it is when you earn it participating in ztitic.news. And one of the ways we do that is through a call-in line. And I meant to mention it at the beginning, but the call-in number that we've had expired, and I had to set a new one, but I didn't have time to change the thumbnail on our screen. So I did change it on the YouTube link. The number is 1-855-437-7005. 1-855-437-7005. If you call in, you can earn your chance to win 444 Tfuel for participating and contributing to the show. So I just wanted to mention that.
It's like $23 right now.
Is it?
Something like that.
Wow.
$22.
There you go. And at one time that was probably $300, because Tfuel was at 68 cents.
Oh, you're right. Its
point.
all-time high was near 70 cents.
Yeah. So, and ultimately,
that's actually over $300 once this next cycle starts kicking off here.
we'll talk about that, potentially later in the show. But so that I just wanted to mention the call-in number. We don't have any callers in the queue yet. I'm not surprised because of the Chiron issue and whatnot. But if you're listening in and you're live with us right now, please give us a dial, and we'd love to chat. I guess sort of housekeeping. I was also trying to get a couple different guests on the show this week. One is on the crypto front. I'll start there. This guy, Brandon, he's doing technical analysis on Bitcoin and XRP and some other coins. He has a focus on Theta, and he seems like kind of a free spirit. He drops a little nugget every once in a while about
Nice.
the corruption of the government. And I thought, the Theta synergy, he might want to come on, but I haven't been able to secure that yet. The other one, Paymon Motahede, shout out to you, Paymon. I know you're super busy with all of your clients, and I know you went to some recent show, but we would love to have you on the Zititic News broadcast. We now have over 11,500 subscribers on YouTube. So as opposed to when I initially reached out to get him on the show where we had like 400 or something subscribers, we've now boosted that. So it might be more worth your while. I'll also happily make a donation to the Freedom Law School from ZNN if you are able to spend even 30 minutes on the show with us. And then the last one, and I'm going to probably clip this section out and send it to each one of these guys to just let them know that I'm promoting their works and would love to have them on the show, is Michael Connett, who's the lead attorney in the Toxic Substances Control Act lawsuit against the EPA. And I'd like to get into that a little bit, but before I jump to that, I meant to mention with Paymon, Paymon, you are permanently featured on our website, ztitic.news. If you go to the news subsection and you dive in, there's a video gallery, and I've got you included in there. They're not popping up like at the top, but you're there because I think you're bringing some really important information to the public that they need to digest. And if you're not familiar with Paymon, go check them out at livefreenow.org or Google Freedom Law School. But anyways, back to Michael Connett. This is one of the key subjects I wanted to sort of cover in today's show. Is an attorney, also a member, activist, contributor to fluoridealert.org. And he is representing Moms Against Fluoride and a variety of different individuals who filed suit against the EPA for on the subject of water fluoridation. And this is a subject we've talked about a lot. It's how me and Xavier met initially, was local fluoride activism in the Raleigh-Durham area, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina. And it was one of my kind of key initiations into just how corrupt and how, as we were talking about offline pre-show, unrepresented we are. And how we really have very, very, very little control over what happens at the governmental level. But this lawsuit came about, I think, as a result of the grassroots activist movement not being able to successfully move the needle with their local representation. Because for those of you who don't know about the public water fluoridation like scandal, you have to look it up. I personally think, I would love to hear your thoughts. You know, it's like maybe one of the biggest problems we face, because if it's true that fluoride lowers your IQ, it makes every other intellectual endeavor to convince someone of a certain agenda that much harder. It also inhibits innovation, problem solving, invention, entrepreneurship. I mean, what does an IQ point represent? It represents human creativity, intellectuality, intelligence, which drives our entire society forward. And so, like, one of the jokes that we had when talking, if you remember, Xavier, talking to the various board members or whatever, like, we would come and present very salient, cogent arguments. We weren't tinfoil hat, nut pot, you know, crazy people ranting and raving. We would go up ritualistically for a period of time and like just say our piece. It was very straightforward, to the point. I would argue some of the arguments were irrefutable.
Yeah.
And they were so dense. You did a documentary with another activist. What did you call it?
The Obtuse Academy.
Because they were like, I love that title to this day, because it's just like you can tell like they know they're being intentionally obtuse.
Absolutely.
And they're all kind of like getting off on it. Like, they know, but like somewhere along the lines, it seems like their hands are tied, and they know that they can't reverse course. And it's up to debate, like what hands are being tied and by who, and why these people. I think some of them are genuinely brainwashed.
Oh yeah, a lot of them are coming from a place of just flustered incredulity that anyone could possibly question Psi consensus pattern formation.
Right, exactly.
And that to them is like a form of miscreant.
Yeah.
It's like you're a miscreant for questioning a dogma that I didn't even know that I was unquestioningly accepting.
Right.
And that they almost in uniform fashion give you the fluoride stare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we would be like, well, we're not going to get it. It's like a chicken egg problem, because we're like, clearly they aren't intellectual enough to actually hear what we're saying. They're too triggered by their own emotions associated with the
people questioning things they ought to be questioning, but they don't even know how to question
and
properly.
They probably, part of them feel, sometimes if I didn't think of a thing, I will feel stupid and I'm embarrassed.
Exactly.
And so like they feel embarrassed that, man, I've been up here thinking this is a really great program for all this time. Like, well, I can't reverse course now. And so then the motion transitions into one of CYA, covering your ass and trying to dismiss. And one of the key things that always came up in defense of the public water fluoridation policy was we're not doing anything illegal here, because the EPA's maximum contaminant level for fluoride in the water is like, I don't know, 0.9 parts per million. And we only put 0.7 parts per million in the water. And of course, every other argument we had, they would just ignore that and revert back to EPA. They're the ones who are, responsible for governing the contaminants in the water. And we're within their guidelines, so we're good. There's no moral problem here. And we pointed out, you pointed out, and there are old videos you could find on YouTube if you knew exactly where to look. Where, we're like, forget about their maximum contaminant level. Like, for a second, like, just principally, you are pretending to be a doctor when you put this stuff in the water, because I didn't select you for my dental care, but you're acting like you're doing me a favor. I don't want your favor. But then we would also argue like 0.7, 0.5, 1.1 parts per million, regardless of the amount, it's known as a neurotoxicant.
Right.
So like there's no amount.
No.
That's appropriate. The EPA, you're saying that that's their maximum. They're wrong. Is what we're saying.
And
like, they're wrong.
There's no inventory of the aggregate composition of what you're consuming either.
That's the thing.
There's no actual dose regulation in the first place.
Right.
So that's what makes it an entire farce to appeal to some, pseudo medical appeal to authority that says, oh, well, these dentists from back then, agreed up until today that it must be a collective good for everyone to just have this intervention. But at the same time, they omit all the data that they themselves can't possibly use to justify the practice. So it's a pseudoscientific assault, and it's one of hundreds of pseudoscientific assaults that are constantly happening around every corner in the society.
Yeah.
And that's what I refer to on this show as the pseudo-scientific charlatanry matrix, is because they're acting as authorities over an easily debunked malicious practice and claiming that there's some sort of like divine public mandate that's afforded to them, which is charlatanry. And it's everywhere. So it's a matrix.
Yeah. So the lawsuit, the reason I went into that whole spiel about the EPA and like our experience is that your local, if you live in a town or a city, right, that fluoridates their water, and you end up going to city council and you protest it, I would say 8 times out of 10, you're going to hear at some point, well, the EPA maximum contaminant level. Now, you can also point out to them that the EPA actually changed their maximum contaminant level some years ago. I think around 2010 or 2009, something like that. It was like 1.7 parts per million, but then due to the revised science, we reduced the optimal level of water fluoridation from like 1.7 to 1.1. Either way, it's still below the EPA's maximum. So like the municipalities are here, titrating the dose, basically acting
supposedly
acting like they're the doctor. And it's like, so you actually admitted when you lowered it. So if you lowered it, so it was optimal before, you lowered it, and now you're saying that's the optimal level based on new science. Can we at least agree that the prior level was too high?
Because they won't even admit that.
They won't even admit that. Yeah. But anyways, they always, from a legal perspective, if you say, look, you're breaking the law here. Yeah. Because this
is mass tort.
You're administering a drug without a prescription, and no doctors are involved, no consent is involved. They're like, we're not violating the law. The law is in the EPA's hands because they govern contaminants in the water supply, and we're well below that. But like you said, you don't know how much water an individual drinks,
or how much food, or what the amount is in any given beverage or any given item of consumption. Not only that, but also the purported only compound that's supposed to benefit dental caries, and that's super dubious evidence in and of itself, is the sodium fluoride, which is derived from fluorine. But what we actually get in the supply ain't fucking sodium fluoride.
Right. It's not,
It is a bunch of hexasilicate acids and fluorosilicic acids that are runoff, essentially.
It's hard to
from
believe.
Industry.
It's hard to believe, but we proved it.
We've already proven the materials trace data and content in the vast majority of water supplies.
And so Michael Connett over here, this lawsuit against the EPA, Fluoride Action Network's heavily involved in it. He's attacking that vector of the argument. Like, the EPA is wrong, essentially. Their maximum contaminant level is too high, and that is giving these municipalities... He's not arguing this. He's arguing the EPA on the science. Like,
right. How can you determine this dose is even safe to begin with?
Right. So this thing has actually, I didn't realize it till I was preparing for the show, has been going on since 2016.
Yeah. And this is an 8-year...
And so, like, we were still doing stuff in the fluoride scene in, like, 2017 because the Orange County,
when that huge overfeed happened.
Right.
That was in 2017.
And so this has been going on that long, of course. I think and I haven't been following it super, super closely up until recently, which is it's concluded essentially, at least this cycle of trials. Now they can still appeal it, and there might be some more deliberation going on, but I think they got to a certain point, but then cerveza virus happened. And so, like, that puts so much stuff on hold because cerveza, like, we can't, so anyways, they kick the can, and the EPA is stalling, and they're just, you can go on the Fluoride Action Network, fluoridealert.org, and, like, see the whole trajectory of the thing. But Connett is attacking that, like, they're experts, the justification for allowing the maximum contaminant level. He's exposed a bunch of hypocrisies among the experts that even the EPA is calling. Like, for example, he had one of the key admissions was this guy, Dr. Barone, where they were talking about a study that showed many women living in areas of fluoridated water have higher levels of fluoride in their urine than women who live in unfluoridated communities. And he said, you testified earlier today that there may be oversaturation going on in the kidney at the 95th percentile level in the fluoridated areas. Do you feel comfortable as a risk assessor exposing pregnant women to a level of fluoride that's so high that the kidney is oversaturated? Boom. And he said, my comfort level, I don't think is really germane. Which is, like, talk about backing down, right? Like, so you were called as an expert, but in this case, you're saying your comfort level is germane?
So in other words, you're completely unfeeling about this process. You're a robot. You have no actual human independent
judgment. Isn't a risk assessor supposed to have feeling?
Exactly. Oh, wow. Yeah, so in other words, this is, again, like the whole, I'm just doing my job fallacy, basically. It's reducible to that. It doesn't matter what I feel. I just got to do what I'm told to do. I mean, that's what all this stuff is. So,
anyways, I wanted to focus on this today because of our background in the fluoride activist movement. I do still think it's a super important subject.
But it is a little bit like it's connected to so many other massive frauds that are just bandied about and don't even have anything in trial right now.
Right.
So, I mean, it is a gateway glimpse into a form of control over people that is rarely and not often enough really brought up, which is appeal to scientific authority as a basis for social engineering.
Well, if you come to the understanding that fluoride, whether it ever was used in the sense of making a prison population docile, which is one of those legends of the fluoride movement that may or may not be true, the science is kind of verified that it does lower your IQ. It does lower your intelligence.
It renders you more docile and more unthinking.
It impacts the thyroid, which is responsible for the generation of hormones, which is how you feel good. Like it's literally your life force almost, you know. It, of course, the hormones have a lot to do with your gender identity, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so this can tie into the transmorgification, you know, that
it is
we see,
tied to it.
You know,
it's part of a mass toxicity index.
We see, mass toxicity, the more just the overall mortality, which the forensics on how and why people die, you know, it's very costly to perform those forensics. So who knows how many times people are dying just because they've had enough fluoride, etc.
And the aging process,
yeah,
and you know that's speeding it up,
right?
And contributing to all kinds of other comorbidities and exacerbating chronic issues and illnesses.
You know, I've said for a long time, if we could get fluoride removed in a large part, I think
that's a big first step.
It's a big first step. Like, we're gonna have a renaissance of discovery. Like, we talked offline a little bit about how there's a bunch of people locally going to city council, perhaps for the first time, to ask the city council
for the ceasefire,
the ceasefire in Gaza in Israel, and they're going to become based essentially when they're realize
going to see real fast how compromised the
compromised city council is. And they're going to get even more frustrated. They're going to get even more cognizant. Well, just imagine if, like, there's a lot of people who aren't even thinking about these things, who are so heavily fluoridated. They're just like in a daze, basically. And if they can get a 5 IQ bump, like,
that could help.
That could help tremendously.
It might take a few years, but
people will start questioning authority more frequently, and they will not just glaze over when they get an NPR type response from city council. That people will start getting mad again. You know, it's like, speaking of your hormones, like, those emotions, you're supposed to feel them. You're supposed to react to when you're being attacked, you know. And
that's exactly right. And just because it operates under the veneer of caring for the community doesn't mean it's not an assault.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not a form of subversion and subterfuge over self-determination of communities.
Would you say that we lost locally with the fluoride effort? We lost.
Well, we were essentially silenced and rendered compartmentalized by the board, and I think though with the overfeed, that did wake some people up, because I did see a lot more people at the time be like, okay, yeah, that is really dangerous what occurred. So at least there was an awareness that this practice was going on. Unfortunately, the I'm very sorry about
you
that.
guys. If you're just listening, you have to check out the video component of this. I have an Indie Weekly article from 2017 about this overfeed. Xavier's talking about the overfeed. You may not be aware, but we're in North Carolina, in Orange County, where we're streaming from. The water management board is called OWASA, Orange Water and Sewer Authority, and we had already had like years of cycles with them where we went and presented to them, and then, you know, they talked about it and had, you know, responses to us, and, you know, news articles and all of this, and it went nowhere. Like, they created a fake review board. And what did we have talked about it on the show before, the Delphi method. They basically created this dog and pony show. Like, they were seriously going to consider our concerns to give us the impression that they cared.
Right.
Thinking probably that we're as fluoridated as they are, and that we're like appeased by that. But then, like, when we see how they review it, it's like your documentary said, they're obtuse academy. They're being intentionally obtuse, thinking that they're pulling one over on us.
Right.
And we're just like sitting there getting more offended.
Yeah, we recorded their little committee horse and pony show where they basically just deride the issue as internet conspiracy.
I don't consider those people adults, by the way.
No, they're the most infantilized people you'll ever meet.
Infantilized. But no, so we had a whole cycle with them, the AWASA board, and it went nowhere, essentially, and we're like, shit, like, we kind of walked away, I wouldn't say with their tail between our legs, but we're like, the only way to do anything here is, like, we have to sue them or something. Like,
right.
It has to be a legal proceeding where they can't control the framework of the discussion. Mm-hmm. You know, like, there needs to be a third-party moderator here. Like, they're controlling the whole conversation. They implemented time limits for us speaking. And
they brought in these shill experts to come in and just shout down any contrarian data.
So that all happened, and then, you know, there was some activism at like the board of the county. What do they call it? The board of commissioners.
Yeah,
or something,
board of commissioners.
Within the county, but like
that didn't get anywhere.
It didn't go anywhere.
They were just like, well, this is not our purview. We're gonna, circle it back around the bureaucratic onion back to Owasso. And then it's like, okay, well, that's who we're trying to hold accountable here. And they're like, well, they're the only ones that have the authority over that,
right?
And it's like, wow,
so
this is total conflict of interest, circle jerk.
Yeah, and so like, I think at that point I was exhausted by it. I think that was like 2014. That was like the last time I was really active in that, and I actually moved out to where I'm at now and envisioned ZNN at that time. Mm-hmm. Like, because we started around 2018, 2019.
Keep the public awareness front going.
I moved out here, built the studio between 2015 and 2018. I think I had it completed 2019. But in 2017, after some inactivity on our part,
boom!
This, like, it was almost like a gift in a way.
It was, because it actually did wake up a lot of people who would normally not be thinking about it at all.
Right.
And because they had to shut down schools.
Just tell them what happened.
I mean, basically, their explanation is that, someone basically fell asleep at the job, and there's like a 5x overdose, and it's poisonous, and
it was actually 8.
Was it
8 times the normal? Now the normal amount is too much.
It's already ridiculous, but then they octupled it, and they had to shut down schools, they had to shut down businesses, they had to do all this stuff, and basically the only thing that ever came of it, they weren't actually held accountable, which they should have been. They should have basically been dismantled over this. But they hired this PR firm to come in there and basically host a bunch of struggle sessions of people coming in from the town to just complain about what occurred and how they were impacted and how this was, shouldn't happen again, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, yeah, we absolutely hear your concerns. We're going to get another machine that's worth $1 million to come in there and make sure this doesn't happen through human error again. We're very sorry about that.
And I'm trying.
It's like, no, y'all need to be fired and dismantled. This is an illegitimate practice.
The thing that killed me the most is like, we showed up, right? Like, we had been pretty inactive, and it was kind of like getting the band back together when we went back in there after the overfeed. And it's like, we walk in there like, I was feeling like, fucking told you so, guys. Like, but the reality was, very few of the people who were on the board at that time were there when we were there. So, like, we were coming to them like, we told you guys this is a terrible idea, the whole program, and you should have never been in this position to have overfluoridated in the first place, because you were already overfluoridating by fluoridating at all. And they were like, oh, we got to go review the notes. Like, we don't even know what you're talking about. Like, they acted like they had no knowledge. They had no knowledge of this whole this years long like saga with us. And they kicked off another Delphi method driven dog and pony show where they considered the public's viewpoint on this. And of course, the UNC Dental School.
There was a brief little period of time during this moratorium where they weren't fluoridating.
It was actually 8 months.
Yeah, or 7.
And the irony of the incident to begin with, right? Like the now, how does this even happen? Like the feed went 8 times faster than it normally did. Like randomly, like so the motor just sped up. Like nobody hit a button. But the irony is, like, whatever error happened that made it go 8 times faster, it wasn't noticed for multiple hours.
Many hours,
because the superintendent, the supervisor, whatever at the plant was at a dentist appointment. I just found like that's so karmic, like in a way.
Because this is them trying to play dentist over the entire population. They're not qualified to do anything close to that. And even if they were, it still wouldn't be constitutional.
It just seems like a comic book strip.
It is, yeah.
You know, like the you're in there you're the water plant superintendent.
That is like
preventing tooth decay, and you have to go to a dentist appointment because of your tooth decay. And meanwhile, so like they had the school, one of the elementary schools is like just down the road from the water plant. And it kind of reminds me of in Durham, North Carolina, the main water plant for Durham is just down the road from Duke Hospital.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, people go there basically
it's like
to
piped
die.
in directly into the hospital. Yeah.
The people who need it the most, you know. Mm-hmm. So anyways, part of me feels like we lost this too, because like this should have been such a slam dunk. Like, you guys were idiots for fluoridating to begin with. Now you had this horrible accident. You literally could have killed people.
Yeah.
We had a stand at one of the farmers markets around this time to spread awareness, and I had multiple mothers come up to me and say, my kid was vomiting and had headaches that day.
Yep.
And they're not saying anything about it. They're not taking any responsibility. They said sorry, but like that's it. Like, and no seeming concern about, well, what kind of long term? If you have a mega dose of fluoride, like, you know, could that potentially cause permanent damage, especially if you're like 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old?
Yeah.
You never know.
There's
you don't know.
There's no moratorium on this stuff, and that's what's so heinous about it. Is it's just allowed to just keep calm and carry on,
right?
And it's happening everywhere in the background. Well, I guess there's about 20, close to 30% of municipalities have actually taken it out. There was actually one county in NC. Recently, I want to say it was.
You're right.
It's a small rural county.
You're right, though. It's Union County.
It's Union County. Yeah. They voted. They had a small board of commissioners, of course, but they did vote to get it out.
Yeah. Here it is.
So. You know, this is actually kind of...
This is very encouraging.
That's encouraging.
Now, there was another case, I forget what county, but there was a guy at the water plant who was responsible for administering it, and he basically pretended like he was administering it, but was not.
I actually, I had a friend who was involved with the water supply as well. He isn't anymore, but he said he would... Yeah, towards the end when he knew he was transitioning to another spot, after all the information that I had introduced him to, he deliberately didn't do it on several of his last.
Those are the kind of whistleblowers we need.
Yeah.
So anyways, this just to kind of wrap up the whole fluoride discussion, I do think it could be massive if we're able to, and I'm trying to jump back over to, I lost my fluoride.
Because it would be kind of a momentum builder for the morale of the people a little bit on a recourse basis.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, not that we talk about UFOs that much, but I think like at a base level, like at least that subject is being taken seriously. To some extent, it gives validation to those who were at least wondering about it publicly and being ostracized for it. Fluoride is another one of those subjects where if you question it, like at least 15, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago when we were doing it, that's 10 years ago, by the way.
That was 10 years ago.
You get the fluoride stare, you get the raised eyebrow, you get the
cognitive dissonance,
the miscreant like vibe,
right.
like that you're a miscreant.
Right.
And if Connet and Co. can win this lawsuit, not only will it eliminate the cover for municipalities to defer to the EPA based on the maximum contaminant level, but it will give a lot of credibility to those people who questioned it earlier on.
Definitely.
I think it remains to be seen. Like, if they win, obviously I think the EPA is going to appeal, but if they say they lose on appeal and it's final, okay,
then there's no appeal to authority mechanism anymore within the local jurisdictions.
Technically, the EPA, according to Michael, they will have to change the law on the maximum contaminant level, which will mean now. Well, I guess I don't know exactly the nuance of this, how this ruling would go, but like, I'm wondering if there's a possibility that they just lower it.
Right. Well, there's that possibility,
like,
because I mean, our buddy and I who put together the Obtuse Academy, we found an industrial outlay of how widespread and monetized the fluoride industry is, and how many products its runoffs and derivatives, and how widespread they are in the worldwide economy. And just to get an assay of how pervasive it is, and the actual bottom line of how massive, in the trillions of dollars that this industry is worldwide, you had to pay over $8,000 back in 2014. We were putting together a documentary. Yeah. And that's just to get an assay of a printout that was hundreds of pages of how prevalent and in how many products and at what levels, and how compensated these industries are. These are basically runoff industries, industrial waste runoff. And I was starting to think, wow, are they getting close to the same amount of money that they're getting off of waste byproducts that they are the actual main product that they're producing?
Well, that's the whole probably Edward Bernays PR magic.
Yeah.
That was what he was most known for. Edward Bernays
is the public fluoridation justification stuff.
But
he was involved in that. Yeah.
Consulting big corporations on how to monetize their waste products.
That's right.
Because the whole American breakfast, we've talked about this before.
Yep, that was part of it.
Was a PR stunt to encourage the use of certain products which were, prior to that, not breakfast foods.
That's right.
Because
breakfast was just what was made last night. You know, a lot of times people would wake up super early, it's first thing out of the fridge, and they go to the factory or whatever. But as the economy was being, massaged into the pyre that it is today, back then, it was all about introducing new consumables.
But it's like
people.
It blows my mind, dude, that Edward Bernays, it's mainline history that he worked with the U.S. Department of Public Health.
He was the revolving door guru.
Design the PR campaign that led to the fluoridation program in the first place. And he's also working with Chiquita Banana and all these other companies to market their stuff. And if that's not a sign that this is a contrivancy from the beginning, I don't know what else to tell you guys.
But yeah, it definitely is a contrivance. It's a weaponized corporatist contrivance, and turning runoff and waste byproducts into medical interventions or dental interventions. I mean, really, it goes back to, Rockefeller too. I mean, the whole buyout of the medical schools in the 30s, and introducing a quote unquote allopathic, which is basically just titrated toxicity intervention into medicine as being this, indispensable fabric of health for the country. That without these petrochemical pill pushing pimps, everyone would be dying at 35. You know, like that kind of PR was front and center in the 30s. And this was during like the Depression, when there were actually phenomenal potential innovations that could have come out during that period, but they were squashed and shelved and intentionally suppressed. And I mean, look at Royal Raymond Rife. I mean, we've talked about that on previous episodes. He had all these medical professionals in 1931 herald many of his inventions through sound healing and resonance chambers as basically the end of disease. And by the end of the decade, Rockefeller had basically completely bought out all those same voices, and they disavowed him and said that they never knew him and thought he was a quack and stuff.
There are probably dozens more inventors that we don't even know the name of.
Oh yeah,
who
absolutely.
were killed and suicided, quote unquote, or you know,
the Hubbard atmospheric engine,
the patent grift.
That was the patent grift, exactly. That was basically rolled out to protect monopoly style practices to a great extent. And the whole intellectual property movement was all about stifling public benefit for the purpose of collateralizing corporate monopolism over these technologies. And, you know, there's some arguments to be made that intellectual property is something that you should cash in on. But at the same time, that whole paradigm has been set up to prevent mass traction, public gain, non-profit directed technological benefits to the public. And I think that it's a shame that so much of that has been glossed over in people's assessment of that was just 90 years ago, you know. That was not even 100 years ago that this stuff went down, of massive you know, medicalist dark age type stuff was happening at the same time of all this technological suppression and all this destruction of architectural marvels and all kinds of stuff. Again, it was getting reset 90 years ago, and we're in the end stage of that reset pattern, and we're seeing reset stuff happening right now.
Well, that's actually a good segue into the next topic I'd like to discuss. It's a topic that we touched on in our last show, and I mean, I would be fine if we touched on it on every single show.
Oh,
honestly.
yeah, no, it's an ongoing mega theme.
But that is the one of resets, lost history, subterranean, and what do you call above terranean? Superstructures,
right.
Civilizations, architectures, infrastructures that have been obfuscated,
Yes,
changed, renovated,
papered over,
whitewashed.
Yeah, whitewashed.
And, you know, we talked about that on our last show, and then I got curious myself about our, you know, like, I feel like almost like Immanuel Kant, like just thinking about the 10 miles around me, the 15 miles around me, just my town. Like, as obviously I've been, you know, outside my town, but like,
which I don't know if Kant ever did. That's
the thing. Is I did, but like, you know, if I'm to look at the world through the lens of my local area, like how much of what I'm thinking about, like, worldwide is actually taking place locally. I like to like bring it back to that. So like the fluoride thing,
macro and the micro,
it's happening locally, but it was actually a national program, and it's this, I think, actually a worldwide program.
Yeah, it is.
You know, so how can I understand my local situation and then extrapolate out, and vice versa? And so I got curious after our last show, started looking up, like, because we were talking about underground, because the big thing at the time back in January was like the whole New York Jew tunnels, right?
Exactly.
And how that surfaced, and that was a big theme for us. And here it is, like materializing in the public psyche. It's now a joke. It's almost passe. It's funny. There's teenage mutant ninja turtles and like everything. Like it's so funny. And so like I found some articles about certain structures local to us here at ZNN in North Carolina. But before I talk about that and like kind of, brainstorm with Xavier a little bit, I do want to play a clip from an excellent channel I highly recommend called Mind Unveiled.
Yeah.
Unveiled. I'm going to play about 10 or so minutes of this clip, which I did mention in the last show, that they did like right before our last show around these series of banquets that took place early in America's history in subterranean tunnel systems.
Yep.
And it's extremely bizarre. And I think Mind Unveiled does a really good job of just asking questions. Like,
showing how suspicious that
Yeah,
explanation from the establishment is. Yeah. They're very good at showing the incongruity between tenable logical deduction in the present with the so-called explanation of how it came to be back then. And I definitely, this is kind of one of their many exposés. They've got quite a few fascinating treatments of these topics. And yeah, it just kind of opens up a whole new vista, a whole new horizon of investigations into the consensus formation dogma we call history.
Right. So this is Mind Unveiled. Check them out on YouTube. We also, I think I've integrated them on the site. I'll have to double check on that. If not, I'm going to definitely update that. But we've talked to Mind Unveiled. They don't want to come on the show because they're really focused on this content that they deliver, which is excellent, by the way. They do these really long form
info docs.
They're excellent. But the invitation's always open, by the way. Mind Unveiled, whatever your name is. Would love to have you on and discuss this, but if not, no hard feelings. We'll continue to promo your stuff and just keep doing what you're doing. But check this out, guys, as a precursor to our discussion about this subject.
Brothers. These Oddfellows were going to Mason City to attend dedicatory exercises of the new Oddfellows Orphan Home. Whatever that means, probably some ritual or ceremony it sounds like. Though we know Waterloo was heavily associated with secret societies, clubs, and the Oddfellows from Waterloo were associated with orphan homes. What we have is strange underground meetings or supposed banquets, which is just a fancy way to say a club that gets together and has a nice dinner. But why? And why underground? So, underground tunnels, secret societies, and these clubs are associated with orphans? If you haven't seen it, we have this whole thing on Oddfellows. But these Oddfellows and Freemasons from Waterloo are basically deeply connected. They still consider themselves brothers and participate in each other's affairs. But this is probably the craziest part. Now, who is this J.P. King, and is he associated with any type of club? Well, on the Library of Congress website, if you search for his name, something strange comes up. It seems that J.P. King was the photographer for the Oddfellows, and the very first result is a photo from that Oddfellow orphan home in Mason City. It's a photograph copyrighted by J.P. King, so the same guy who took the banquet photo, and it seems this is 15 years after that news article we were just discussing. It says the youngest children at dinner, and it's kind of weird. Maybe not creepy, but kind of, especially if you consider this is somehow connected to underground tunnels. There's another photo of a nursery. It's the Oddfellow Orphans and Old Folks Home, apparently. So yeah, if you look up J.P. King, the only photos that come up are of this Oddfellow orphan home and the famous banquet table in the sewer photo. There is this interesting article from February of 1904, which is a few months after the date given by the mainstream of October 14th, 1903. In this article from the Waterloo Courier, 1904, it discusses this event was not the only one of its kind. It's titled, Banquet in a Conduit. Chicago comes to Waterloo for ideas of a feast. 600 served at tables over 3 blocks long. Banqueters were 40 feet below the surface of the earth? Wait, what? Quote, it is quite complimentary to Waterloo that a city as large as Chicago should come here for ideas concerning the up-to-date serving of a banquet. A few evenings since the feast was enjoyed by 600 Chicagoans in a conduit from tables 3 blocks long and 40 feet under the surface of the street. End quote. So in Chicago, they were doing underground banquets as well, and apparently Chicago wanted to learn from Waterloo. There's also this discussing of the Illinois Tunnel Company that was responsible for around 20 miles of tunnels, which seems quite impressive for its time. It even discusses how before the banquet, the guests were treated to a ride in electric cars underground for at least 3 miles of the tunnel, going around 20 miles per hour. Pretty interesting because when you look into the Waterloo story, they make it seem like, oh, it was a rare, weird, and silly event. It was just some one-of-a-kind scenario. But that's not true. They did it in Chicago as well. Well, it gets even more bizarre. There are even more of these underground sewer dinners. In St. Louis, there's another very similar event. In 1916, there was supposedly a new, almost finished sewer, and to celebrate, a bunch of people came down here and apparently paid $700 to eat here. They were 100 feet underground and around 200 people came to this event. It literally describes it in the same exact way. A portion of the tunnel was transformed into a banquet. These guests, according to the newspaper articles, consisted of city officials and bankers, meaning elites, which during this time would be a part of some type of club or another. They even decorated it in a similar fashion. They were taken down into the sewer through elevators, and the dinner table was over 200 feet long. Interestingly, it says kind of the same thing as the Waterloo event, that there were no speeches. Seems like a weird thing to repeat. If it's just a dinner or a banquet, why would there be a speech? Unless it's something else. And also, it's really weird that there's this whole thing about an explosion and how the workers were really mad that they were throwing this banquet down there. And they even had 19 policemen stationed to guard the entrance as there were threats that they would destroy the tunnel with explosives during the dinner. Why were they so upset that they wanted to destroy the tunnel? Perhaps there was something strange going on down there. I thought that was weird because it's kind of hard to find any more info on that dinner from St. Louis, and it shows that at least from what we know, there were 3 different banquets occurring underground involving the elites of a city. If it happened once, then yeah, you could argue that sure, maybe it was just a one-time thing to be silly and unique, just to celebrate the creation of a sewer. But the fact that it's happened several times brings to question the true purpose of these banquets. Obviously, these clubs like going underground to have dinners or secret meetings. Waterloo is interesting because it's another term that's used for multiple cities, and it's also Napoleon's last battle. One thing I found that may be connected is, as I was searching for more information on subterranean tunnel networks in Waterloo, Iowa, there's this blog talking about potholes in Waterloo, Canada, and how it revealed a massive network of underground tunnels that was previously unknown. 14 miles had been discovered. How do you just discover old tunnels? This was similar in Charleston. One of the top tour guides was rediscovering the history of the tunnels under Charleston. How does that happen? They don't even know when these things were originally built and for what purpose. There are also the Waterloo Vaults in London, so obviously this name is associated with massive underground passages. This also connects to the subject of subterranean rivers, as it's one thing to construct a tunnel by digging up the dirt and filling it up back again, but an underground passage with a river is a whole nother level. There are many of these around the world, but I wonder if there are more that we don't know about, and perhaps many of these underground tunnels are actually much older than we have been told. Sure, maybe they did build it as they say, but it really does seem like the full story is not being told. Why wouldn't you just showcase the entire tunnel being built instead of just a few photos? Why not show more photos of the event? And why would you build these tunnels after the city is constructed? How do you just forget about waste management? Perhaps it was built for a different purpose, especially if we consider the Masons were most likely a part of this whole ordeal. Tunnels for reaching different parts of the city secretly, and for having meetings underground without the rest of the city knowing about it? I tend to think that they're not telling the full story. And if they did construct any tunnels, it was to connect to a bigger tunnel that was already there. As a random side tangent, in the movie The Three Musketeers, the Viking-like vessel goes into an underground river that leads to secret chambers that lead up to the city. So just imagine what could be beneath our cities that we don't know about. And I'm sure that many of you have been hearing the news lately. I'm not going to go too deep into it because it gets pretty dark, but what I was truly curious about is, were they really building these tunnels in New York? Or is it some type of exposure to reveal that there are underground systems, and you could say societies beneath our feet? Were many of these tunnels already there and then just expanded upon? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Let us know if there are any more similar banquets or dinners that occurred underground, or even if there's anything about secret tunnels in your city. Hope you all enjoyed that, and this is going to be an awesome year, so all we can hope is that our minds may be unveiled.
Let go of everything you think to be.
So with that, just gives you a taste. This was a 23-minute video. We just played it 10 minutes or so. After our last show, I was just curious, like, what has anybody found stuff under the city that I live near?
Mm-hmm.
And Mineville just talked about underground rivers, and what do you know? There's a hidden tunnel and waterway in Raleigh, North Carolina. So they say your every Raleigh urbanite has sipped brews at the Raleigh Beer Garden and sucked down cheesy pizza beneath the rainbow portobellos at Mellow Mushroom. If you were hanging out there last week, I snuck right under your feet, crawling beneath the forgotten tunnels and hidden cobblestone waterway that flows beneath West and Peace streets in downtown Raleigh.
You can find all kinds of mysterious things beneath the city streets. Dot, 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 dot. Yeah, that's...
So, like, we're not even a big metropolis like
No.
New York City. And this kind of hidden infrastructure. So, when was that built?
Well, there's like an anecdote that says, my grandma remembers seeing the gravelly stone channel when watching baseball games at Devereaux Meadow, a forgotten ball field whose shadowy outline can still be seen today. But that anecdote doesn't say she remembers it being constructed.
Right.
She just remembers that there was a more like obvious entrance to it. So
Right.
So it makes you wonder, well, how did they construct it? Did they do it after the fact, supposedly, like they did in Dry Run Sewer in Iowa? Or was it always at the forefront of their minds to maybe build a wastewater sewer underneath Raleigh? You know, it's like, I don't think that we have the full explanation for city outlays and all the infrastructure that is connected to them. We've got, convenient yarns and architectural maps. And
Well, that came up in our previous show
but-
where we talked about the Biltmore, which we've talked about multiple times, and the underground infrastructure connecting various businesses and the Biltmore estate itself, which is miles from the downtown area where much of this infrastructure is known about. And the explanation is really not agreed upon. Some people talk about a planned subway system that never came to fruition, or maybe operated for a short period of time in a test bed type of thing. But then others are like, no, these tunnels were dug after the fact to facilitate, alcohol running during Prohibition. And it's like, do you understand the type of work that's involved? Digging underneath existing structures, reinforcing it in a time when some of the structures didn't exist, but some did. And like,
how are you gonna...
much of it is pre-combustion engine,
right? And people are just supposed to be doing this in order to smuggle booze. Like, you don't think people are going to notice?
And how long of a period was that anyways? How long was Prohibition?
What, like 10, 12 years or something? It was for a while.
Yeah. But like, that flies in the face. Like, it can't just be that. It can't just be during Prohibition, because the Biltmore estate has, like, at a minimum, a 2.8 mile tunnel dug to channel water to a custom built dynamo built by Edison himself for the Biltmore. A custom, like, one of a kind, first of its kind type deal. And you're telling me they tunneled 2.8 miles to this water source just for the electricity generation of the place. And that's not even considering the other 2 miles required to connect the Biltmore to the Freemasonic Lodge, which it was stated by an official who gave a tour to PBS in a report that we played, and Mind Unveiled also featured, which is where I got it from. The network downtown connects all the way up to Biltmore. So that's a separate 2.8 mile, tunnel that had to be dug and reinforced and ostensibly still exists. I would think a collapse of a tunnel like that, unless they filled it in at some point with concrete, would cause issues for stuff above it.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, that's the underground waterway in Raleigh. I also found historic brick tunnels beneath the American Tobacco campus in Durham. Mm-hmm. So an even smaller cityscape, by the way. Raleigh's the capital of North Carolina. I don't know the exact population count right now, but like Durham, I don't even think we're over 1 million people.
Oh no, the entire Triangle complex, including all the surrounding boroughs, is around 1 million. So like Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Apex, Cary, Fuquay, Clayton, Garner, all of these, Wake Forest, all the surrounding areas put together is close to 1 million.
Right. Now, what's interesting about this article is they talk about these bricks with special symbols on them. And again, we don't know if those bricks were laid on top of a tunnel that already existed.
Right.
Or if they were the original tunnel. We don't know that. We would have to actually excavate it out and see what's underneath. But I found a thread on Reddit about this specific tunnel system in Durham, and they pointed out, I don't have the exact link. If you guys are interested, please comment and I'll find it and post it like after the fact. But on Reddit, it was discussed in the Durham specific subreddit. Someone posted about it and they were talking about it. And the bricks, I guess, came from an early 1900s entrepreneur who had a brick factory in Durham, and he had this special symbol that was printed on every brick. And, I don't know. I I can only read what's like public on Wikipedia, but that at least dates the bricks in the tunnel to the early 1900s. But again, my point earlier, that doesn't mean that tunnel was built then.
No,
it just means that perhaps the bricks were laid then.
Yeah, it could be basically a facade over an already existing.
And if you were only
structure,
looking at the top of Tobacco Campus and not seeing the tunnels, you'd be like, the foundation was poured whenever that was in the 2000s. You know what I mean, for Tobacco Campus. So like your frame of reference is only surface level deep. So, I look at this and it makes me actually think about what infrastructure exists that we're not even allowed to know about.
And it's like,
this is like a popular geocaching, urban explorer type setting, right?
That topic and that activity has gone like, wow, parabolic since we began, basically.
And I think the materialization of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle situation.
Man, that is a crystallization of so many different cross-pollinating memes right there. It's pretty amazing.
Well, just the whole legend of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to begin with is like you have basically aliens,
right?
Who are mutated by the water supply, living beneath our feet,
right?
And there are whole homeless civilizations that are known to inhabit these facets of our current infrastructure that are municipal in nature, like maintenance hallways and stuff. Like there's all this space,
right? And clearly this infrastructure was ubiquitous enough for H.G. Wells to think of it in a science fiction capacity in The Time Machine, right? This sort of underground civilization that basically feasts on the sort of naive hordes on the surface,
right?
And it's kind of like, whoa, like we are all hot and bothered about stuff that's happening above ground, which there's plenty of reason to be, but we don't even have one scintilla of a purview of the kind of activities that could be going on subterranean.
Right.
So it's like underground world order, guys.
Yeah.
Because that's maybe how all kinds of stuff is transported in a way that distributes resources and powerful projects in a way that they're just literally unseen. It's not all above ground, above sea traffic. It's subterranean.
And a big, information thread that I've been following, it kind of part of the sweater of ignorance that I was wearing. I start pulling this thread and I start becoming more naked as I pull the threads of this sweater. And one thread was fluoride. One thread was lost history or whatever. One thread might be
fake space.
Space. Another thread was deep underground military bases. And this is like probably my prerequisite to this whole subject of like found cities. City founders, like did they walk on top of the land and find a piece of wilderness and then call it Durham, or was Durham this lost infrastructure that
just had to be excavated a little bit more or something?
Nobility was able to plant their flag on and say they founded because like a charter, a royal charter, like we
commandeer these premises.
You're the land of Charleston, so you're Charles, and so you get to call it. Anyways, so it makes me think about that, the deep underground military bases. So like this is like they're showing in this picture here on this article about the tunnels in Durham, a tunnel with a bunch of graffiti. So obviously, you can find this area, you can get to it. There's graffiti artists, there's geocachers, who knows who's down there, but like this is the publicly available
Right.
tunnel system.
This is like the social media, like photoscape
Yeah.
access for this kind of stuff now, and it's like, there's probably 3, 4, 5, and 6 other layers deep.
And I'm about to get to that. Like, so to tie it back to the fluoride subject a little bit, the head of the Federal Security Agency, which was the predecessor to the Department of Education, the Department of Public Health, all these federal agencies we've known and grown to love, used to be one big super entity called the Federal Security Agency. And the head of the Federal Security Agency is the guy who worked with Edward Bernays to bring about the fluoride subject and program. His name is Oscar Ewing. You can look him up. And I took a keen interest in this guy because he was mentioned in a book by Eustace Mullins called America Murder by Injection. Look that up. Eustace Mullins. And he mentioned Oscar Ewing as like the bureaucrat who was tasked with bringing the National Fluoride Program to be. And you're probably wondering at this point, how are we going to bring this back to the tunnel systems? Oscar, after he successfully brought this national program to be with Edward Bernays, he retired in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and part of his biography is that in retirement, he worked with other government and corporate interests to bring about this thing called the Research Triangle Park. And talking about like looking through the world situation through the lens of the local situation, Research Triangle Park is this big like government public-private partnership that uses land zoning to define a specific area for economic development. And it's like much like the water fluoridation is celebrated by the government as this like super successful program that
Public health achievement number 9.
They also
out of 10.
celebrate
Yeah,
the creation
yeah.
of the Research Triangle Park as this great victory for economic development. And to tie this back to the infrastructure and the deep underground military bases, the found cities theme and potential, Research Triangle Park was like this. It was sold to the bureaucrats in North Carolina at the time as a great idea, partially because the office leasing profits could be distributed to the state universities. And so we weren't just going to create tax incentives for corporations to come and establish their offices here, which brings jobs to the state through tax incentives, but we're also going to use a bunch of this office space for different government agencies. And one of them is the EPA. The EPA has a big headquarters here in the area, so it's super relevant, the whole trial and the battle going on with fluoride and the EPA, just because of the proximity in which we're talking about, and like how central our area is to the whole fluoride program to begin with.
Home court, really.
But so in my research on Oscar Ewing, I came across these oral histories which are on the Truman Library of Congress website, and I don't get it who and why these histories, but it's basically someone asking him these questions about his career, and then it's a transcription of his what he said. And the fluoride subject came up, and the Research Triangle Park subject came up in his oral history, and he said one of the reasons why RTP came to be, Research Triangle Park came to be, is because Washington wanted a alternative infrastructure headquarters in the event of a Washington, D.C. nuclear strike. So if the White House, for example, and a bunch of like government buildings in D.C. were blown up, part of the continuity of government program is to use all this infrastructure that was set up and built in the Research Triangle Park as an alternative working space. And so I'm just like, in a way, I feel like I grew up like in the suburbs, like kind of a small town, you know, existence, very much like, but then when I think back, it's more like Stranger Things, where you're living this suburban existence on the surface, and there's all this stuff going on around and below that you have no purview over. And seeing these tunnels, which date back who knows when, it just makes me wonder what else is
being contained, being hidden from plain view,
or even being created, because the whole deep underground military base, that's like supposedly net new construction. And even that aspect, the idea that there's actually a cross-country subterranean train system that's available only to the elites, whoever they are.
I mean, apparently there were all kinds of pneumatic lines and stuff in these urban areas. You know, people could go in these basically vacuum tubes. And the last little vestige that we have of this technology is when you go to the bank and you put your card and your cash in there and you send it into the bank through the little tube. Well, there used to be pneumatic lines that, again, we're talking early 1900s, that were extremely efficient pre-subway style methods of travel. And, we had to discontinue those lines to put in utilities and sewer lines and blah, blah, blah. But do you think that all those pneumatic lines are completely decommissioned, or do you think that they maintained a few of them that went to special access points? Probably the latter. I don't think they discontinued all of those pneumatic lines. In fact, you see in the movie Kingsman a little bit of a revelation of the method on this note, where they go down this elevator it's like a special access point in the middle of this random like field, and it goes down, and the scene lasts for like 5 minutes, and they're still going down in the elevator.
Right.
And they get to this point, and the elevator opens up, and it's basically this super nicely kept special access pneumatic line, and then they can go into this incredibly complex, highfalutin military underground facility through this pneumatic line. And it's like a super special access point, and we're supposed to just think, oh yeah, that's purely fiction, and you know, that's just Hollywood being wild and being fanciful. But it's like, or is that just a revelation of some of the method of secrecy and transport?
Like, we're
that
dealing
still
with
exists?
two ends here. Like, on the one hand, there seems to be, and I'm playing a video on mute of like some erosion happening, and there's all these like sarcophagi just exposed,
These massive tombs,
huge. You know, look at those stone.
Oh, are there going to be regular sized people in there?
It's a necropolis, but
because those tombs look a lot bigger than regular people. I don't know.
We have this dichotomy, I guess, of old infrastructure being found and uncovered that calls into question the mainstream historical narrative around architectural development. At the same time, we have what's presented to us as the pinnacle of today's architectural development, and it stands in contrast to a lot that is being uncovered. But then you have this, to me, this question about like the technology is lost if we believe that what we're presented is the pinnacle. But I don't think it's lost. It's just like everything else, it's hidden.
Yeah.
The technology.
It's
so
been
like
buried.
Granted, we don't have it. The people don't have it. Like clearly, we can see that in modern day construction methods and initiatives. And of course, lots of excuses and dismissals will take place saying, well, you know, we don't, these are gratuitous constructions that were, you know, built during times of dictatorship and, you know, where obscene efforts were made to build, you know, nonsensical constructions, and that's all it is.
We didn't have screens and porn back then, guys.
Yeah, and so
we just
like,
had a lot of human power and slave labor, and we can just, you know, do all kinds of magical things without the screen.
that's why your public school looks like a prison, is because it's just the most economical way to house all those people. You know, it doesn't need to be a beautiful construction like we used to make in antiquity.
You know, the most precious thing known to man is there. Kids, the future, you know, let's make it look like a prison.
But like,
this is the best we can do.
But like you were talking about with like the Hollywood revelation of the method, like clearly more advanced technology and construction methods are at our disposal. It's just on who do we choose to spend that effort on, and it's clearly not for the general public.
No.
Just go to, like I said, any public school. You know, children are they're the future, right? And this is how we reward them, with an environment that's like not too far off of a prison.
No, it's really not.
So, but like the deep underground military base, I've heard other, you know, quote unquote whistleblowers talk about the advanced technology that they do have to excavate and build underground. You know, like our drilling capacity is not what they're telling us.
Oh no.
You know, so like we're supposed to believe the deepest we've ever drilled is 8 miles in Russia, right?
For oil.
Which is, I mean, a proof point about the lack of information we have around the center of the earth.
Oh, well,
but that's
certainly.
only if we believe that that is true.
Well, yeah, we're supposed to believe that it's just a giant, you know, basically rock sheath surrounding softer and softer sheaths until we get to a big magma ball through which all of the tendrils of volcanoes and stuff are connected, and due to seismic activities somehow that magma gets shaken up.
Yeah.
And, you know, it gets spurted out here and there and the other place, but we're basically on the outer edge of a giant fire magma ball. I mean, it's total poppycock. There's no evidence for that, but it's a model that's forced down our throat.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 miles, that's for industrial oil exploration. Even if it was 5 times that, which I'm willing to admit that based on infrastructure possibilities, it could be that deep. But you're talking about a much more porous surface, much more porous aspect,
Right.
to navigate through. So it's not just this, you know, crust that we're supposed to accept in the current model, that there's a lot more to it. And there's a lot more mystery than meets the eye, and runs counter to the textbook hegemonic purview that we're given.
Yeah.
Oh, we figured it all out, guys. We know exactly what's going on 1,700 miles beneath our feet. It's a giant lava ball. It's like maybe we can think outside of balls for a second. That would be nice, because it's clearly much more complex than that. And just, I mean, the internet, just like what we were talking about earlier, these cables literally run from sea level shore to sea level shore, across the Atlantic, across the Pacific, across the Indian Ocean. It's forensic level non-convexity, because that's the way water behaves. It gravity, all of this gobbledygook that's just been, again, forced down our throats. We're just kind of supposed to believe that, oh, we can notice a certain rate of acceleration on the surface, therefore it must be the result of this crazy attractive universal force that's being emitted or being channeled through the center of a molten magma ball, because that's the only purview that we have.
Did you hear we're going to be landing on the moon again soon?
Oh, of course. I think maybe they'll try and improve the phone reception resolution. But I don't know how they could possibly improve on an instantaneous real-time conversation to the White House. I mean, that was some really high-tech stuff.
Hey, speaking of calls...
Where can I get that reception, guys?
Speaking of calls and reception, we have a caller in the queue. Area code 775. I'm going to drop you in the queue if you don't mind stating your pseudonym or name, where you're calling from, and how you found ztitic.news, and then what you would like to talk about.
Where can I get that reception? Speaking of calls.
Oh, you must be calling from the moon.
Are you calling from the moon?
Hey, seriously, you're very, very faint. I don't know if that's a replay or something.
Just put me on the phone.
Oh, there
he is.
I hear you now. Oh,
bring me on.
You're on, buddy.
Beam me up.
Are you calling from the moon?
I think you might need to turn your computer down. I'm getting an echo.
Seriously, you're very, very faint. I don't know if that's...
Oh, I'm very faint?
I think we're hearing what you just told him. It's a little bit of a delay.
Okay.
Hey, there you guys are. Let me mute my... Let's see. Can I hear you now if I don't have the screen on?
Yeah, you sound good now.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Well, I turned it off and...
I think we're hearing
Testing.
You
Can
are
you hear
live.
us
I can't
okay?
hear you on my phone.
You can't?
Are you live?
Well, I turned it on and...
Some kind of delay, I think, going on there.
No.
I heard no.
Caller 775. This is an audio check. We're clearly having some difficulty coming through.
In
getting
live
some echoes.
time.
Yeah. Can you hear this? He dropped. So
Darn.
he's calling in again. So let's try this.
Let's give it another shot.
All right. Dropped again. Sorry about this, folks. Not sure what's going on, but hopefully we can get the caller on. If they do make it on and we have a chat, be happy to award this individual with 444 Tfuel for participating in today's show. That is, of course, unless we get a bunch more callers, because technically it was awarded to the fourth caller in the queue. But we don't have that many. So
yeah,
it's okay.
We've only ever had a
okay.
couple
That's all right. We'll get
in
there.
lifetime.
But yeah, if you're the only caller, absolutely would be happy to award you.
Keep ringing in.
I can call him back. Let me try that. Was that a frog I just heard outside the studio?
That's what it sounded like to
I
me.
guess it's that time of year. They ran out of groundhogs. I don't know if you saw that headline.
Well, let's see if this works.
Hey.
Testing, testing. Are you with us? 775 area code.
Yeah, it's Crypto Smitty. How you guys doing?
Crypto Smitty. Thanks for joining, man.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Guys having a good time tonight?
Indeed.
Yeah. Have you? I know you had your wife called. I saw your message, and you had to go have dinner. But did you catch any of our conversation? Did you want to add anything to it or bring up something of your own?
Well, let's see. Hold on, let me mute this thing because having both streams go is horrible. Okay. Let's see. I mentioned something earlier in the stream here. What was it? Oh, you guys are talking about missing technologies and that sort of thing. And are you guys familiar with the water engines that people that have had water-fired internal combustion engines?
Yeah.
And specifically the guy up in Buffalo, New York, that passed away.
Right.
Yes.
Wasn't he a police officer as well?
He had been, yeah. And he was actually at that point. I think he was a security guard at a grocery store at that point.
Right.
There's
a whole list of people like that, like over the last 30, 40 years, who've just claim to have this invention and then they get sick or they get in a car wreck or whatever.
Or they meet up at a diner and then are dead later in the day. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of suppressed tech out there. The Hubbard atmospheric engine is a really interesting one too.
I'll throw one at you if you want to research it. It's called the fish carburetor.
And is that just F-I-S-H or is there a C in there?
I'm not sure. And
could be an E at the end.
Now
okay, there it is. Reese fish, yeah.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah. The Reese,
oh my God.
The Reese fish carburetor.
My father told me about this. I'm 68 years old, and my father's passed away now. But he was telling me about that and what an amazing invention it was. And apparently the gentleman that developed it also passed away under unusual circumstances.
Suspicious circumstances, yeah.
Well, I've heard Alex Jones ranting about how they had carburetors in the 60s that would get 50 miles to the gallon.
Right. And
I wouldn't be surprised if this was involved with that. I don't know about this. Looks like, production.
This goes back 30s, 40s, 50s, somewhere in there. But, so anyway, I thought I'd throw that bone at you. And, let me throw one other thing out here on the table, and then my wife has called me away again, so I'm going to have to go. But this is kind of an interesting thing. One of my friends worked at Area 51, and he had can I put this together? I'm sorry, I don't know if I can put this together in a second. He sent me a video this week. Let's see if I can find it real
Drop it in the chat if you come up with it.
I will. Talking about a woman that and her. Okay, he actually did. I mean, he verifies that we did know Evie. You know, I mean, he was physically present for that. You know, EBE is the extraterrestrial body, the one that survived the Roswell crash. And let's see. So he's familiar with a lot of this, but he's older than me, and he won't break his NDAs, but when stuff comes into the public domain that's correct, I end up getting notified. And he sent me, there it is. Okay, hold on just a second. He sent me another one. I'll check that one out too. This was about, there's a woman that had, I'm in the wrong, that's the wrong one. Oh, I know her. Sorry, I don't mean to hold you up, guys. Apologize.
No, we're waiting, interested in this insight here regarding the physical bodied presence that your friend purports pertaining to the ET entities.
Okay, now here's a woman that had claims to have had an experience and with meeting. Okay, here, let me get where's the share? Actually, here we go. Copy. I have way too many windows open here.
That's me, like, all the time.
Okay. Take her over here. Pardon my French. There we go. That should take me there. Okay, if I drop it on ZNN, you'll get it.
Yeah, or in the chat, the live chat.
Chat's not available at the moment. So I dropped it on
the Telegram.
I dropped it on your on Telegram.
Cool.
Telegram. Oh, great. I mean, that's probably what we're gonna do to round out the show. Is just do a Telegram surf anyway. So, we'd love to come up with that testimony.
You got to check this out. This woman claims to have actually piloted craft, been contacted at age 14, taken up, and they asked her, well, what do you want? She says, well, I'd like to learn how to fly your stuff. And they said, well, okay. And it's actually, I mean, A, it sounds credible, and B, the fact of who it came from, I'm going to guess that it is. But you can make your own judgments, but I think you'll find it interesting.
We'll check it out. We got your link down here.
Let's
anyway,
flight school.
I've made my contribution to the show, and my wife is calling me, so I got to run.
We'll get up. Give me your address on
thanks
Telegram, and I'll get you the 444 Tfuel. Absolutely. Thank you for joining and sharing that. Crypto Smitty brings up a good point. We have a Telegram channel. It's probably our most active channel.
It's probably got like a 50 or 60 news impressions on there every day.
Right.
So, I need to like rep or spread the channel into one of these forums and see if we can get some more traction.
By the way, your channel rocks. I don't go there enough.
Thank you.
Because actually, it's overwhelming sometimes. You have so
That's
much.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
as Art Bell said, it's a quickening, and you can only handle so much.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we
True.
feel like that on our shows is like, at the rate we do them a month, once a month if we're lucky. There's just so much we could talk about, even though we do 3 or sometimes more, longer shows. It's not enough time to talk about everything that really needs to be talked about.
Hopefully, in this next cycle, we got Theta and Tfuel, following the flagship and perhaps even outperforming it here in the next 18 months. Yeah, we could get on board to do more rundowns more frequently.
Right.
Because
That'd be wonderful.
there's always so
gentlemen, I
much
gotta
information.
Run. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, no, I mean,
And I'll catch you up with that address tomorrow.
okay, great.
Great.
Yeah, no, he brings up a good point. I mean, and you do as well. The frequency of posting on Telegram is just so easy.
It's so easy. It really is a good kind of info rundown outlet for some of our information. And you get different admins in there with different points of view, including myself and a few others. But there's a pretty wide variety of perspectives.
Yeah, and I just like how it's organized,
Yeah.
like with the channels, like Twitter. You can have followers and whatnot, but like someone could have thousands of followers, and even though they're subscribed to you, it can get kind of lost in the mix. Whereas
Right.
here, you have defined channels. They can be chat channels or not chat channels, where people can contribute and ask questions and make comments and whatnot, or sometimes they're locked down and it's just like the links that they want to promote. We see it as a discussion forum. Maybe someday there will be some kind of integration with our website. The reality is people are not going to our website yet.
We're very much early movers, early adopters, and sometimes that can feel like a giant waiting game. But
yeah, there's only 39 people on ZNN, but you heard Crypto Smitty say the channel rocks. Like, it's overwhelming how much content gets put on there. And
so 39 people are getting their daily digs
Yeah.
in terms of info wowdom. So
and granted, it's not original content that we're posting either. It's just
it's reposts
stuff
but
that's on our mind. It's often
that we're coming across.
discussion fodder for these shows, which are original content.
Yeah.
But to your point earlier, in this next cycle, I'm definitely going to be more aggressive in how I use the Tfuel generation facilities that we have at ZNN, being a stakeholder, having been a stakeholder, and in the next move, we might be able to buy, for example, services for slicing and dicing all the shows that we've had, and sharing original, more professionally cut and produced snippets and pieces and shorts to really, because the Tiddick News Network is we need a network effect. Like, the more people who come in and digest and enjoy and share the content, the better. But like the way that's going to happen is with more short form pieces, I think.
Yeah,
like that kind of viral type material.
Yeah.
And it's just a bandwidth. It's a bandwidth issue.
And a sort of mining commitment issue too, because we've got over 150 hours of material, and we cover a dozen different topics regularly. So distilling and compiling all of that content does take some time, and that would be a great application of something like an AI Telegram or an AI capacity that could go into our videos and just like just kind of auto generate all the different clips that have a continuity frame of reference. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not anti AI.
No, it's just a derivation of our own algorithms,
right? But like, if AI can semantically understand all 150 hours of our content.
That would be amazing.
And pick out the different thematic threads that we weave, and then automatically generate short form and even create animations that incorporate the news articles that we, have posted or referenced with perhaps generatively AI created animations that coincide to articulate the points that we're making,
to flesh out the narration that we're having.
And that actually is probably a pretty good topic for us to a little bit drill into, because I was having a conversation today about and we were having some of this offline, the speed of development of this.
It's happening super fast. I mean, I remember when it was first coming out, really about this time last year, and it was the whole like super insta response GPT stuff, and now it has metastasized into full on high def videos.
Because like you have music, like I highlighted a couple of these points to my wife earlier today. And we touched on it a little bit offline, the whole ethical framework. Like, we need ethical AI. Well, what is that exactly? Because now there are, for example, I've mentioned it before, I'm a bit of a Michael Jackson fan. So I've come across these YouTube channels, which are simply AI generated Michael Jackson songs, where, for example, it's a song that he sang as a child, but the AI has been trained to sing it as a 40-year-old Michael, so in his adult years.
Wow.
Or I've seen Bruno Mars singing so-and-so's song, or Whitney Houston singing a song that she never sung before.
Right.
And so like now there's IP issues at play. Like, okay, so your AI is monetizing my IP by training the AI to mimic my IP and then repurpose it.
Yeah.
Or like New York Times is suing OpenAI because there are now people writing articles with ChatGPT that was trained on New York Times publicly facing content. And they're like, where's my cut of the money that you're making off of providing that service? So
that's a big old bag of worms.
Huge
right there.
Pandora's box has been opened. But like, obviously the power of it is very alluring.
The whole like digital rendering of video with celebrity likeness in real time. I mean, it's going to get to the point where you're going to be able to create your own Bruce Willis action film without having anything but an AI generator, script writer kind of content, and then you're going to be able to monetize that without the need for production crews and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, Hollywood's dead. So
they're in trouble.
Hollywood is in big trouble with this stuff.
Hollywood will become,
which is great.
Like Hollywood will basically be bought up
by this tech
AI companies.
That's exactly right, because they'll have the access to all the actors' rights and the shots and the cinematography, and that's why Theta, and the music.
Theta, they're all in bed with CAA,
and that's going to get dovetailed in with the games. So you're going to have fully
100%.
Fully immersive movie-like gameplay,
right,
that's based on a script that you could write. I mean, that's
and
pretty advanced, guys.
And I brought this up to my wife earlier today, and I've referenced it on prior shows talking about this subject. The episode of Black Mirror called Jonah's Awful or something like that.
Right.
Where this woman, she's a corporate HR person, and she was or a manager, and she was responsible for firing somebody who was supposedly her friend, and it was this big drama, and it happened in her day-to-day life. Then she goes home and watches I forget what the analog to Netflix was. They had some it was clearly a Netflix like copycat in the show. But anyways,
Right.
she watches this episode with her beau, and it's her.
Yeah.
It's her doing exactly what she did that day, and it wasn't just her watching it, but everybody was watching it that knew her that night. They were all watching the same program, and so then she was defamed. Her whole life was ruined because everybody saw her as this horrible person based on the AI's depiction of what happened to her that day. And of course the AI superimposed popular celebrities instead of recreating her visual representation, but basically it synthesized it because of what we were talking about before, this ubiquitous surveillance of everything. Like
Right.
your phone is recording you, your monitor is recording you, you're providing all this data through text and on the phone, and you know your proximity sensors and everything, it's all being downloaded essentially. And then as soon as they're able to like map it and use Gen AI to create something new out of it, that was the whole crux of that episode. Like she's like, I'm defamed, I'm gonna sue this Hollywood production company. How did they copy my life? Like, this is too close to my life. Now I'm gonna sue them. She ended up in a server room
Right.
in the episode with a bunch of computers.
Yeah,
and
who-
that's
who,
what
who
we're
are you
gonna
going to hold accountable? Exactly.
Right.
This is
It's
all
like,
AI generated, right? Based on surveillance footage.
Captain America, whatever that movie was, you know, that Marvel movie with Captain America where he, you know, ends up in the old Nazi computer room.
Right. Well, and it's like,
Last Soldier or something like
yeah,
that.
Winter Soldier. You
Winter Soldier.
combine that with the Ready Player One stuff,
Right.
Where you've got fully immersive skin suit type stuff, and this is where people can just check out of the deteriorating, conflict-ridden IRL world, and go into this immersive, gamified existence where you have all this preferential stimuli, where you just reside. Who cares about family formation and kids when you can live out a superstar existence in your full AR VR rendered skin suit existence. And this is the kind of substitute reality that they've been building, and it is now on an exponential growth curve. And it in accordance with Metcalfe's law, the networking effect for this kind of stuff is gonna dwarf Google. It's gonna dwarf the Internet 1.0 that we've that's birthed this.
Well, now with the Apple Vision, I think Apple Vision came out since our last show.
Yeah,
Wow.
this is
And
a
so now-
literal distillation of everything we've been talking about, and it's now because they first kind of tried the whole Google Glass kind of lame stream sort of rollout of that, and now it's just like, yeah, we're just gonna copy Ready Player One prototype, and it's literally
It's out of Black Mirror.
It's out of Black Mirror.
The only difference is,
Yeah.
in Black Mirror, it's more advanced.
Yeah, it's
Where
even
you're not
more
even
advanced
wearing
than this.
anything.
You're not even wearing anything.
But this
right.
is like
this is the prototype. This is the beta phase.
Google Glass. I'm just, Moore's Law and everything.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have the compute capacity to do enough with the Google Glasses that would be compelling enough to get someone to wear the glasses.
Exactly.
And now they're at this point where they can create this, like, basically theater room on your head.
On your head.
But
and then
that you can see through as well.
that you can see through as well, and then also tangibly, palpably interact with it with real-time gestures.
yeah.
Do you have all that chip, that kind of smart? It's almost like
It makes you wonder if, like,
you combine that with smart dust, and then you could literally create like a Star Trek type simulation chamber.
Yeah. And
I
actually,
mean-
I thought we've probably talked about it in some of the early episodes because it was more contemporary at the time, but the Pokemon Go
Yep.
situation.
That was a very
like,
early iteration.
imagine now
Yep.
Pokemon Go with Apple Vision.
Exactly.
Okay, instead of
Now
you
you're
holding
talking
your phone up in front of
serious.
you, where you know you can kind of see around the phone that there isn't a Pokemon there, but on your phone it looks there. So
It looks like
kind of
it's there.
cute, right?
It's kind of
Like,
cute.
but
right. now it's like fully interactive.
it's fucking there.
Yeah, it's basically there because your whole frame of vision is rendering
Encompassed
this thing. Yeah.
by this machine.
Yeah. And again, how many years are we away from fully immersive systems where you put yourself in like a suspended chamber? You know, Joe Rogan's been popularizing all the saltwater suspension therapy. You combine something like that with
Right.
the whole skin suit, Ready Player One tech, and people got a substitute reality here.
Yeah.
And you
We
want to
keep
talk
going
about
back to this Ready Player One.
this is a huge meme. I mean, it's a
came
huge
out
egregore.
6 years ago.
Yeah,
So
but it's
when
predictive
did
programming
We started
for
ZNN
sure.
in 2019, so we're
Right.
We're right. Like it came out right before we really started
yeah.
broadcasting.
Yeah,
but
and-
we've been talking about it the whole time.
Yeah, because this is a huge blueprint of where they want things to go and where they see things inevitably going.
And actually, what you were just talking about, the whole suspended, you know, the salt chambers and
Yeah.
you know, we've talked
Fully
previously-
immersive substitute reality.
Yeah, the we've talked about pod babies.
Yep.
You know, like grown
Septuples. Yeah.
babies grown in a machine that sits in your, so you don't have to carry it and all this.
That's right.
This is all gonna, and this ties into the other bullet point I had on today's show, and I think it all kind of ties together, really. But like, I think this advancement in terms of quote augmented reality. Think of that, augmented reality. This is gonna augment your reality.
It's going to extend your ability to experience things. Right?
But also that's how it's going to be sold. But really, it will augment your reality because your reality will be so horrific. You will want an escape. So you said the simulation chamber, like getting to this point where, well, shit, like who needs to even just be up and walking around with this thing on my head? I can just like sit in a chamber and be. And there are some actual Black Mirror episodes like that too. Even the movie Avatar is kind of like that, right? Like these guys
absolutely.
totally and Avatar. I mean, it's called Avatar, for God's sakes. But like, you know, he's like handicapped. He can't walk in his real existence, but he can go into this thing and be like this
super being
9 foot super being. But in the Ready Player One trailer, and I haven't even seen this movie, but like,
I haven't seen it all the way
I've
through
seen
either.
enough in the trailer.
I've seen enough in the trailer, and
I get it. I don't need.
It kind of shows you the whole
Everything.
movie in the trailer.
It does.
Literally. I mean, granted, the whole like interior of the movie is kind of cartoony, superhero kind of stuff. So you're supposed to discard it as being pure fantasy again, but it's really a revelation of the type of society that is going to be coaxed into this type of tech
and run parallel
parallel with it.
Like while your reality is being augmented by these systems as they get better and better, your reality is going to be
getting worse and worse and worse.
And worse. So
which is exactly the egregore they're trying to push here.
Right.
Just surrender the real world to us power brokers, us people who have all the resources and capabilities to govern things, and you can enjoy your little, pod over the washing machine.
Yeah, and you can see in the trailer, like everybody lives in these mobile homes that are
suspended campers and trailers and stuff
on scaffolding. While the Earth is full of open space and beautiful wilderness where everybody could have a nice plot of land where they probably couldn't even see each other.
Oh yeah,
they wanted to. They could plant trees and stuff and greenscapes and everything. Instead, everybody's concentrated in these smart cities,
right?
Where everybody's living in squalor while they escape real reality
and create an Elysium society.
Right.
Exactly.
But like it touches on where, I mean, clearly they're steering us in this direction with like the homeless populations that
Squatter
are shown,
nation.
and like
Yeah.
the upper class, I guess the middle class is what we're supposed to get from here. The privileged in this society, they at least get these VR headsets where they can reimagine their life as Ready Player One in this like cyber futuristic competition or whatever. That's our future that they're planning, and it dovetails into one of the key topics I wanted to discuss with you today. Is another key theme, and that is the favela-ization.
Yep.
And the real estate bubble, the economic situation, the financial crisis, all of that stuff.
Yep.
There were a couple key things we shared back and forth between today and our last show around this. One of them was the and I'm showing a news report on Fox News. Atlanta, the city of Atlanta passes ordinances to deter homeless from seeking shelter at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. And this speaks to, like, again, this whole glut of infrastructure that's out there. Municipal infrastructure, corporate infrastructure, residential infrastructure that's been constructed. It's extensive and massive, and there's plenty of space for everybody to, have a home. But like we have this economic disenfranchisement, which is resulting in the inhabitation of all these areas that were once utilized spaces or funded spaces or maintained spaces. And this is just one small example of that. But
And this is happening all over the country.
But you
Look
have
at Chicago.
malls
and- oh my
closing, office spaces closing. We started sharing over the last few weeks some different Instagram channels.
And they say deter the homeless, but within that category is also just massive migrant hordes.
Of
I
course.
mean, it's like, they're saying it like it's a purely humanitarian issue within America of just being homeless, but it's like, no, a lot of these are imported
Sure.
mouths, imported
Absolutely.
demands, imported welfare state. I mean, it's,
Right.
Yeah, they're getting handing out $10,000 and stuff to all these random
It's been
people
funny
with
to
no
see
check.
the,
I mean, it's unbelievable.
As we approach
Unreal.
the Selection 2024 season, it's been funny to see the about face by the Biden administration with respect to the border, because Trump was this Mexican-hating racist,
Xenophobic.
yeah.
Oh,
But like, I don't even think they're just. It's a PR show to pretend like they care about the problem that they created in the first place, like for political reasons, for election reasons. That's all it is, in my view. Are they actually going to try to tamp down? No, like the massive migrant hordes are continuing to stream over. Like it's porous.
Yeah.
The border is a sponge, basically.
Yeah, and then,
thing of
it's
Swiss cheese.
It's
like,
this cognitive dissonance of like, oh yeah, we're gonna accept all this crime. It's totally cool. We're not gonna vet anybody because being concerned about the national welfare of the border and all of that, that's evil. It's like, no, it's actually in your best interest to be concerned about that. You can problematize the response to it all you want, but it is a real issue. And Lexus liberals need to start caring about it. I mean, they care about it in this kind of duplicitous manner of like, oh, well, I'll volunteer to let someone come into my house.
yeah, right.
I
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, and then that happens, and they're like calling up the city planner. When are they going to get transferred? When are they going to move on to the next home host? Please help! Like,
It really happened.
yes. There's already pilot programs where they'll go into this.
You have to be one of the biggest idiots in the world
And apparently you get some kind of compensation for it. You get some kind of, government, crumb toss. Like, well, we'll pay you like a rent equivalent to just like house these people like indefinitely until we can get them housing independently. And yeah, this is happening all over Boston. It's already going. The squatter nation imported favela-ization is already happening.
Well, we've been sharing videos back and forth, and it does tie into the hidden infrastructure discussion as well. But just like the glut of McMansions sitting out there.
Oh my God! All over the Midwest,
like how
abandoned neighborhoods with like millions upon millions of dollars of like supposed real estate value just decaying out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And
and I'm not saying we should import the migrant hordes.
No,
give them to the
There's already enough housing insecurity or etc. amongst native-born veterans and family formation, heritage populations here that are like stymied basically by this. Blackstone, FedRes, REIT, Airbnb, stranglehold over the inventory. It's like you look at some of these areas in Florida and some of these hotbed sort of tourist locations where it's like 75% of the Airbnbs don't even get a single occupant all year. It's basically like a tax haven for like a huge real estate investment trust or something that just we do have a short-term rental here, don't tax us like we're non-residents.
The whole WeWork company that blew up in value and then went bankrupt.
And just went bankrupt. Exactly. And
so that's I feel like that kind of activity is just like living off the fumes of the bubble.
It absolutely is. And you could see Airbnb bankrupt by the end of the decade. I'd say eventually these people are going to have to liquidate because maintenance and insurance, all this kind of stuff is going up like everything else. And so
that reminds me,
what's going to keep these people from just mass liquidating at some point? Because they have to. And it's like, there's not going to be any qualified buyers for these properties at current values. Where's it all going to go?
That reminds me, insurance companies in North Carolina ask for a 42.2% rate increase for homeowners insurance. And if you guys aren't aware,
oh man,
the state regulates these things, and the companies have to basically go and request a rate, and then it gets deliberated upon and approved or denied. I do think that they denied this rate, but to me, it's an Overton window type of situation.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm gonna, as a salesperson, you would always ask for more than you think you'll get, hoping that they land somewhere above your minimum ask.
Exactly.
Right? So like they don't necessarily expect to get 42%, but like they'll be maybe happy if they get 30%.
Exactly.
But what is reasonable? Neither one.
Exactly.
Neither one.
It's still price fixing.
But they want it to appear reasonable by, oh, well, we asked for this much, but we only got this much, so we actually got screwed.
Right.
These insurance, we
still have a long way to go to get to fair value for what we need for our revenue.
But we've been trading videos on that situation, the favela-ization, the squatter nation, so to speak. But it calls to mind, again, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle sewer system in New York, and all this infrastructure that is just sitting there decaying.
Bro found old York. Exactly.
There's some good video. There's a Decaying Midwest on Instagram. They've got some good videos where it's urban exploring, you're not supposed to be in these locations. They're, it's technically trespassing, but nobody's really minding them. However, they've got some really interesting videos of like supposedly underground facilities where the power's on.
Yeah.
And some people have explained like, well, in order for this the property's still owned by somebody, it's just not profitable. But in order for it to still be insured and not be like a total liability for the person, they have to have some minimum amount of maintenance. So they might keep some of the power on or things like this, like have cameras on the location to protect it or whatever. But
a lot of this stuff is really creepy.
Very spooky.
It's spooky. And it's like, how much infrastructure is there like this anyway? I mean, it's wild. And these are just small little clips too, I mean, full length, like, investigations and,
Well, you sent me, was it Nellie's house?
Yeah.
Nellie's,
or it was, I think it was Michael Jordan's old mansion.
Yeah,
It's just
Chicago.
Abandoned outside of Chicago.
Crazy.
It's this, sprawling 15,000 square foot mansion, which is probably low digs on the hierarchy in terms of what he still has access to. This is probably his like dump shack, basically.
Right.
But it still just goes to show, like, there's all this abandoned, decayed housing everywhere. Right. And that's not to say, we should just import everyone to come live there. It's like, no, we should repurpose it and actually dedicate resources towards maybe making these abandoned units a little bit more accessible to the present population in America. Like, let's not, get too open arms about the infrastructure, but also obviate how poorly it's being distributed and how overly centralized the ownership is.
It also calls to mind the construction methods.
Sure.
Like some of these mansions, they're impressive, right? But it clearly doesn't take that long at all,
right,
for them to fall into disrepair. Like the Michael Jordan one you showed me, he has like a whole basketball court in there. It's totally flooded,
right?
There's mold and this and that. Like
exactly.
But like meanwhile, you have these structures from antiquity lasting hundreds of years, and they're largely fine.
Yeah, and it's like
they're still structurally sound. They're not like totally lost cause projects. Like, and in fact, one could argue that some of the structures we're currently inhabiting are just renovations of these older structures. Like the bones are actually so good that we just renovated on top of it.
Yeah, some of the larger buildings, and then just some of the inexplicable, like, jaw-dropping demolitions of things that clearly did not need to be demolished. Like the old Vanderbilt mansions on Madison Avenue, for example. Like, if you look into the history of how those mansions and who they got passed on to and what purposes the current construction there is, and it's all just a bunch of warehouses to sell overpriced goods and stuff. And it's like, where did the craftsmanship go? Is this really just a complete lowest common denominator, race to the bottom, profit over people kind of thing, or is there something a little bit more eye-opening to be had here? The Vanderbilt mansions on Madison Avenue, dozens of thousands, actually one of them was almost as big as the Biltmore, not quite as big, but it still is over 100,000 square feet.
Wow.
Mega mansion on Madison Avenue, and it was sold off after one of the heirs got really sick and died of a stroke, and I think it was Alice Vanderbilt who sold it to one of these holy merchants who basically tore it down and turned it into a giant warehouse for clothes and stuff. But yeah, that craftsmanship is just lost to history. And we get all these silly explanations like, oh, it had to be, there was too many repairs. It had to be renovated too much, so we have to just completely destroy it. Like, you could easily turn it part of it into a museum.
It costs money to destroy it.
It costs a lot.
You could at least sell it for $1.
Seriously.
Instead of spending however much money, thousands, millions of dollars to demolish it.
Oh, millions upon millions to demolish it and then put something, totally garbage, just a box basically there and instead. Like, the example I'm thinking of is Bergman Dwarf or something. It's like a really expensive department store that stands there where the old Vanderbilt mansions used to be, and it's like, this is just a warehouse. It basically shows the trajectory of values in the American elite, going from like apparently unparalleled architectural excellence and the feat to build these things therein to, we just care about the bottom line. We just care about profit, and
Right.
we don't actually give a rat's ass about craftsmanship or lasting constructions at all, and it's just not feasible to do that anymore, and we're just going to make money and sell overpriced goods. Like, that turn of events supposedly happened in a period of like 10 years.
Right.
All of a sudden, the American elite went from, oh yeah, the Gilded Age, and we have billions of dollars, so let's just pop a irreplicable mansion over here and a completely unprecedented construction over there. And then 10 years later, it was, all that is ridiculous and stupid. We just need profit now.
That's the thing that doesn't match up, is like, we're
unbelievable.
Supposedly at this level of technological
Super wealth or
development
something.
and super wealth. But yet, when you look at all the millionaire and billionaires' mansions,
they suck compared
they're
to the
nice.
1920s mansions.
They're nice, right?
But they still suck.
They still
suck compared to like the Vanderbilt mansions of the 1920s.
Right.
And, some of these rap stars are supposedly, adjusted for inflation, in the same currency, wealthier
Right.
than some of those heirs were just 110 years ago. So, what happened? Is it just all about money?
Right.
I don't think so. Oh, the Queen of Versailles is a great little glimpse into this. Because this guy was supposedly building this mega mansion that was supposed to rival these huge palaces for like over a decade, and he went bankrupt.
So this guy's like, I mean, if you watch any of the show, he's clearly some sort of megalomaniac.
Yeah.
And he's intoxicated by his own wealth. Yes, he has wealth. He has millions of dollars, but like in the grand scheme of things, he is a nobody in terms of overall wealth. He's like a timeshare and a casino owner.
Right.
Like that doesn't even rank up there anywhere close. Like even the public list,
Right.
The Bill Gates, the Jeff Bezos, they're not that rich. They really aren't compared to, the usual suspects and the black nobility, which we'll probably never know. And yet he's like a lot of wannabe trillionaires, maniacally focused on having the biggest and the best construction to park his sorry ass. And he went about building this thing, Versailles, his home, which shows you his overinflated idea of himself, like to call it Versailles, right? Like, you're obviously shooting for the stars. But yeah, it was a 90,000 square foot house, which started in 2004. Okay,
It's today.
we're 20 years later. He's gonna die.
Yeah.
And this will not be done.
No.
And I think
This is with modern equipment, modern wealth,
he's-
modern
he
everything.
spent over $100 million on it.
Well
Now,
over.
part of the time between 2004 and now, was the financial crisis, and I think construction was paused. But regardless, this is the best $100 million can buy, or even $200 million.
It's
can
only
buy
half the size of the Biltmore.
of the Biltmore, and it's actually a kind of a fuzzy math type of situation. This is part of the history. in terms of trying to calculate, well, what is a dollar in the late 1800s when Biltmore was supposedly started, right?
Right.
Because pre-1913,
Right.
you can't really, like, you can go adjust for inflation post-1913. But before that,
Right.
what was a dollar and what a dollar would buy,
That's a good point, yeah.
it's a little more difficult to figure out. So I've seen estimates that, like, Biltmore cost the today's equivalent of over $2 billion. But I've also seen other calculations that suggest it costs like 300 to 400 million.
I think that's the state estimate.
So,
Yeah.
like, you know, this is granted a third of that, maybe half of that.
Right. But it's
So it
not
makes
even
sense.
close to the quality of
Yeah.
materials and grandeur.
Even though
not
it's
even
half
close.
the size, like yeah, Bobo construction.
Right.
You know, the materials alone, you know, don't even pale in comparison.
They literally don't even begin to compare in terms of resiliency and quality and
this is not like the 90,000 square foot that exists. It's not even equivalent.
and it's
Like,
not even finished.
like, it's not even finished, but, like, you know, like we were talking about before, you got at least 4, 5, 6, 7 miles of underground tunnel systems extending off of Biltmore. So, like, clearly the dollar went a lot further back
Like,
then.
A million times farther. Like for every $1 in like 1880, it's worth like 180,000 of them today. I mean, it's what it seems like. How did they build the entire Biltmore complex with less than $5 million back? I mean, that narrative makes no
they had
sense.
to build the train systems to get there, to carry the materials, like trains.
That
there
was
were no
included in the
automobiles. It's truly mind-blowing.
mind-boggling. Yeah, and here's a modern example of someone trying to do a lavish construction, and here we are 20 years later
Making a reality show about how much of a shit show it is. That's where we're at.
and people are just supposed to accept this nonsense of, oh, we just had a lot of labor. We just had we mastercraft slaves that just had nothing else better to do. We didn't have screens and porn, guys. So we just had incredible capabilities and skills and, could work 29 hours a day, 8 days a week, 400 days out of the year. And we're just amazing.
This is what, like, these YouTube channels exist where these guys are shown to dig this by hand
Right.
out of the clay.
I have seen these.
And I love these channels.
This is pretty cool.
It's awesome. But, like, the idea that this is all it took to do what has been done in the past, just more of these guys, I just don't buy it.
I don't buy it either. I mean, this is we're supposed to believe that this is the equivalent technical prowess of like these guys
are eyeballing everything.
Right. It's all eyeballing.
As would a bunch of slaves.
Right.
Like, give me a break.
Right. And it's like, this is all cool and stuff, but this is not going to last more than 20 years. Like, it's
Not
going
at
to
all.
get eroded away and it's going to get destroyed with weather. And I mean,
It's
clearly,
a temporary showcase.
it's temporary showcasing. And yes, these guys are definitely, ripped and determined and, craftsmen in their
Dedicated.
own right and dedicated
And
in
it's
what
awesome.
they can accomplish and everything. And that's great. But it's comparing apples and
I
oranges.
agree.
But a lot of times people will show these guys and it's like, no, there was just like a bunch of these guys doing this.
Yeah,
And it's like,
and
this construction is supposed to last 1,500 years.
you mean they argue that
Yeah.
in the McGraw-Hill textbooks
Yes.
that you get in the public schools?
Absolutely.
With
The ones bankrolled by Robert Maxwell,
Right.
Ghislaine Maxwell's dad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like the whole sheer force of determination. Humans are amazing. And it's like, well, yeah, we are. We have pretty cool capabilities, but these cool YouTube exposés of guys doing dirt constructions and stuff, it's literally apples and oranges compared to some of these like castles that are in the side of a massive granite mountain. Like, have you seen the castle that is in? Oh, let's see if I can think of it. I want to say it's Romania, and it is just. It's literally in the side of a mountain. The castle is in the side of a mountain. Like it's basically blended in with the mountain.
Right. I've seen that. Yeah.
How do you explain that? They supposedly constructed that in the 1400s or 1500s or something. And it's just still there, like a museum. People just stroll in there, and it's a castle built in the side of the mountain. We're just supposed to believe it's just people with like chisels.
Hard work.
Determination. Awesome. Sure. Yeah, I would love to see them try to do hard work and determination. Just like Elon Musk being like, I want a Biltmore replica. I'll dedicate $5 billion. Can y'all do it for $5 billion? They couldn't do it. I guarantee you they could not do an exact replica in another mountainous region randomly in the world, an exact replica of Biltmore. They couldn't do it for $5 billion. No. There's no way. So, if they can't do it for $5 billion, how about $50 billion? Elon Musk and Bill Gates should be able to pool some money to show that it's possible.
Well, we're wiser now, and we're not going to spend $1 trillion on a pyramid, that just buries the dead. We're wiser now. That's what they'll say as to why they haven't done that.
And George Washington was black. I mean, Google AI has informed us of the true nature of the founding fathers, guys. The flight school mention seems pretty interesting. I'd like to get into that and see what the caller was talking about. I mean, I'm totally open to the idea that there are other entities far beyond the charted realm that we have today. And they have sophisticated transport tech.
Yeah, I'll check out that link. And maybe we'll talk about it on the next show. Absolutely, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles could exist. Beneath us, beyond us. I will obviously be skeptic of any whistleblower who says that they saw an entity and it was this kind of entity.
And for me, it's like maybe they did see something, but it doesn't mean that it came from some intergalactic spaceship guerrillas.
That's what
miles
I'm getting
away.
to is they call them EBEs. What do they call it? Extraterrestrial biological entities.
Yeah, EBEs. Yeah.
Again, we had a whole show on extraterrestrial. The word itself being sort of indicative that it's not beyond the realm we're in.
It's just outside of the terrestrial realm that we have charted.
Right. Or that it could be from land that's extra.
Yeah.
Just
extra land. Extra terra firma.
In comparison to what we know to be charted.
Right.
And we also know they do all kinds of weird fucking animal human experiments.
And that's part of it too.
So I don't know that it's some extra dimensional being, or maybe it's a artificially created entity.
Right.
Maybe it's a clone of some kind, or some kind of hybrid being that they created for a specific purpose. I've heard different whistleblowers talk about the quote grays as having, they were basically biological machines. They're basically robots,
basically androborgs.
Yeah. So I don't discount that at all.
I don't discount that either, because it could be just a bad experiment let loose.
Yeah,
a little bit. And for all we know, our present human iteration is a experiment
Well, one of the
let loose.
one of the guests we had on our show multiple times, Dutch, is what he goes by. He mentioned to me one time that the UFOs, that technology was mainly used for surveillance of the population. So, that would just hover indefinitely and traverse above for super speeds.
Yep.
And they were inhabited by grays because they are basically machines, is what he said. He's like,
Synthetic
they
entities.
couldn't
yeah.
get a willing participant to just surveil all the time in one of these machines, so they created these machines.
A sort of bio-Borg synthetic entity.
Yeah, I
to
totally
just be able to have enough functionality to pilot one of these things. And that if you look into the science behind incubation entities, that's been going on a lot longer than people would imagine. So it's possible that these entities could have been incubated, crafted for a specific purpose, and they're not again, from gorillions of miles away in some other galaxy cluster.
It's actually a good callback to Mind Unveiled, because there was a whole episode on, what do you call it, homunculus?
Yeah.
And that's like the artificially created man, right?
Yes. And
So
there's all kinds of images of Lord and Savior JC as a homunculus from
So in
over
other
600
words,
years ago.
the idea of a artificially created bio entity that is under somehow our dominion, that's not a new idea.
No, it's actually perhaps as old as time as we know it, which calls into question our chronology as a species. Big time.
Well, speaking of time, we're at time for today's episode. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Crypto Smitty, for calling in. Hit me up with that address. I'll definitely award you 444 Tfuel. If you're not already a member of the Telegram channel, go to our website, ztitic.news. There's a Telegram link on the sidebar. Don't forget to bookmark our website, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and share the content if you like it. And if you'd like to be a contributor, look out for our next stream that we'll do probably in a few weeks. And you can perhaps win that 444 fuel for yourself, or you can just contribute by submitting links, thoughts, suggestions on the Telegram channel. That's where we're going to read it most. We're also on Instagram and, of course, YouTube and a couple other platforms, but we monitor Telegram every single day, and there's, like Xavier said, 40, 50 articles. I don't know if it's that many per day. At least 10 per day.
At least 15, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great resource and an open channel of communication with us if you have ideas for the show and how we might be able to improve. Until then, y'all stay safe. Hope you enjoyed it, and peace out.
Adios.